Hello, good morning, Roberto.
Good morning, Janet.
Congratulations on being part of the Verdi chorus and being invited as a soloist. So tell me, is this your first time to work with them, and why is it performing with them very special or significant for you?
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, thanks for the congratulations, first of all. Pleasure to be on your show. Actually, this is probably my 24th, 25th concert with the Verdi Chorus. I've been singing solos with them for since basically the early 90s. And, I've loved every single one that I've done. I'm by far their most frequent guest collaborator, as you might call. And we've done many, many concerts in the past. So what makes it really special is just that, you know, opera choruses and regular like church choirs. I sing with church choirs also. I'm a paid cantor at a church down in Newport Beach. When you sing church music, you try to get a really beautiful, fine tone, and a sound that's ready for the church. Opera's not like that. And with opera choruses, you sing and you sing out, you sing loud, and you're just leaving basically everything on the floor. So here you are with 40, 50 people, 60 people that are singing in the chorus, and they're singing their guts out, and it's really a lot of fun. The programs really feature the chorus itself because the programs are geared toward large ensembles. But you have solos, you have big ensembles in opera that include soloists. So that's what we do. We fill in those spots, and it's just really wonderful to collaborate in that way.
Mhm. So you've traveled all over the world and also in the US, and you've performed in the Philippines as Jose Rizal in an opera, as
Yes,
well as Elias in the
Noli.
Tagalog opera Noli Me Tangere.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that experience?
Well, so the the opera Rizal, mga huling araw, was done at the uh, CCP, PCC, whatever you call it. I can't remember what it is.
CCP, Cultural
P,
Center of the
yeah,
Philippines.
Cultural Center of the Philippines, so it's CCP, and we did that in 1996 during the centennial of Rizal's death, the centennial year of his death, and it was really meant to honor our national hero because he happens to be from Laguna, which is where my family's from,
Oh.
and we have a special connection to him.
Mm. Can you please tell me more about your roots? You mentioned your family is from Laguna. So
Yeah,
talk about your roots, your Philippine roots, and
sure. Yeah, I was born in Santa Rosa in Laguna, and so of course my mother and father were married there. They met there, were married there. I spent my first years uh, in Laguna, in Santa Rosa, brother and sister along with us, and then we moved to the United States when I was five in 1967. So even though I've spent most of my time even though I'm pretty much grown up American, it doesn't take away from the fact that my roots are in the Philippines. My parents' roots are in the Philippines. They spoke Tagalog to us, at home. Of course, we couldn't speak it back because we just didn't have that facility. But we understood it fluently, and it was a special part of our upbringing and culture. Growing up, we had a family group called the Gomez Family Singers, and we performed all over the LA area, also parts of Southern California. And the Rizal, the mga huling araw, was something that was commissioned by my dad, and he wrote the libretto on it
wow.
when it was done at the CCP. He collaborated with Tita King.
Lucrecia Casilag?
Yes, thank you, Tita King. So and Tony Espejo. So Tony Espejo directed it. Tita King helped us with some of the music, but it was actually composed by a wonderful Filipino composer, Ed Parungal. So that was done in 1996, and I really haven't been back to the Philippines since then because my folks after that came out here, and we came here in '67, made a living for ourselves here. But then my folks went back to the Philippines in 90, 91, 92, and then they ended up really not doing well back there. So they came back to the U.S. and in late 1997, 98, 98, and they were here after that, and they passed away here in the U.S. But when I went back to the Philippines probably 20, 25 times over those years between 67 and 96. So I got to see a lot of it.
When you came here to the US, you were based already in Los Angeles?
First Oxnard.
Ah,
Yeah,
okay.
we lived in Oxnard for a while. We went from Oxnard to Santa Monica, lived in Santa Monica for probably 6 years. Cerritos for another 4 or 5 years. And then mom was an MD. So she needed to she needed to pass her California boards, right? You know the story, right? You pass the national boards, but then you need to pass the boards of the state that you're trying to practice. So she tried to pass her California boards, didn't was not able to do that. So she ended up going to Ohio for residency and internship, and in Pittsburgh for residency, Ohio for an internship, and then came back here, took her boards, passed them. Then she had a family practice here from 1980, about 1980 to 1991, 92.
Mhm.
So yeah,
So you took up a music education here in the US.
yes,
Mm,
yes, 100%. I
what
was at
school?
the I was at Cal State Northridge, and they had a fantastic opera program at the time that I was going. Studied with some fantastic singers. Um, just before I'd gotten there, they had just graduated. I don't know if you know Carol Van Ness. She's a she's a big Metropolitan Opera star. Was a big one for the previous generation. And Van Ness was there. Christina Weidinger was there. Quite a few people that ended up singing all over all over the U.S. and internationally. I've had a fair career internationally also. Philippines, um, did my Asian debut in Shanghai. Did my European debut in Italy at the Arena di Verona with Nixon in China, and I probably sung for probably half a dozen A-level companies here in the U.S.
And you also went to Mexico.
Yeah, I sang in Mexico. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Barber Seville. That was okay. That was not one of my best. That was not one of the best contracts I've really ever had.
Uh-huh.
The best I had to say that the best contract I ever had was in Verona.
Um,
That's the birthplace of opera, and we were doing an American premiere of an American piece in Italy. That was really really special because the venue that we did the program at is was a former Coliseum.
mhm. Mhm. Yeah. So, are you
Excuse
the
me.
first one or the only one in the family who is an opera singer?
No, my brother sings opera, and he's based in New York.
Mhm.
Um, he hasn't had the solo career that I've had, but he does a lot of he does a lot of uh, supplemental chorus, supplemental productions at the Met, um, and he also does a lot of directing. So you'll see him directing a fair amount on the East Coast. Excuse me, I'm fighting this cough.
Mhm. Mhm.
Brutal. Anyway,
And are you the older one, or the younger one in the family? How many are you?
I'm the oldest. I'm the oldest child of the family,
Mhm.
um, and then comes my sister, and then myself. And as I think I mentioned, we had a family singing group when we were here with mom and dad,
Mhm.
and we sang at a lot of different places here in Southern California.
Mhm. So
Um,
you practically grew in a very musical family who encouraged music to their
they
children.
encouraged music. They didn't. My folks didn't necessarily encourage a music career.
Mhm.
That was a different story. We were all, everybody was doing it for the fun of it. Um, I think they were happy eventually with what we were doing, especially my brother and I with the opera. But I think they would have probably been just as happy if we had been professionals and and had 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 professional careers as doctors or engineers or lawyers or something else.
Mm.
Um, we're as all Filipinos are, we're very you come to this country and you want to make the most of every opportunity you get, right?
Yes.
Especially as an immigrant.
Hmm. So this has been your career ever since you started. You didn't take any odd jobs before you came to you were here in the US?
Well, I mean, in college, I did work study, so I worked in uh, I worked a kitchen is wrong. I worked in a dormitory. I worked in dormitories, cooking food basically
Mm.
as a cook. And so I would do my classes during the day, and then at night, all the other students who were who were boarding at the university, they would come by and say, "Hey, aren't you in my class?" I go, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Get out of here." So that was one of my first jobs, and then I've always helped out. Um, anybody who's asked me for anybody who needs my help with a construction job or something like that. So I was helping out with that for quite a few years. But once I started doing opera full time, I've never really had to stop doing it.
Mhm.
Um, so I've been making a living at it since about 1986.
Wow.
Yeah,
So,
it's a long career.
so when did you realize that you wanted to be an opera singer?
Well, we grew up with it in the house. Mom and dad were um, volunteers for a local opera company, for a local opera group in Santa Monica, and they would perform 3 or 4 productions a year. And so they were in the chorus for that group. And so they would drag us on a Saturday, and we would sit around, watch the opera, fall asleep after the overture, and be asleep for about 2 hours, and then wake up at the end when they finally came back out. And so the whole family was really educated. We were introduced to the music. We were familiar with the music growing up. But when when the opera broadcast began happening on TV on PBS back in the late '70s, we as a family, my dad especially, he was just a huge fan of Pavarotti, and so whenever he would come on, he would watch. And I'll never forget that there was one Sunday when I was in my senior year in high school when I was taking a lazy Sunday nap, right? So I was sleeping, heard this incredibly gorgeous music coming from the TV, went over to it. I was in a stupor, watched Pavarotti sing Cielo e Mar from La Gioconda, went back to sleep, and then when I woke up later on, I asked my dad what that was. He goes, "Oh, that was Pavarotti, blah blah blah," from the San Francisco, and that was at the San Francisco Opera. And after that day, I was listening to opera every day for 3 4 hours because my dad said, well, here if you want to listen to some more of this, I've got all these recordings, and he had hundreds of recordings, and so I was just playing them constantly over and over, and I just fell in love with the music. I fell in love with music, with the art form, with the artistic expression, the emotional expression, the drama. Every part of the human experience can be seen in opera. It's one of the most incredible art forms there really is.
Mhm. What was the first time you watched an opera and you started to tear up?
I would have to say it was probably that year because after watching Pavarotti, I was sort of, I was really overwhelmed by the beauty of what he was doing. And then when I started to listen to recordings and I would get into the drama of it, La Boheme especially was the one that hit me. La Boheme especially was the one that hit me the most. And I got to say that listening to La Boheme for the first couple of times was kind of overwhelming.
Mhm.
Just beautiful.
Of all the roles or characters that you have portrayed, do you have any favorites?
So my favorite of the quote standard repertoire, Italian, French, German operas. My favorite of them has to be the Barber of Seville, Il Barbiere di Siviglia. So I've done that role probably 20 times
Mhm.
in 20 different houses across the U.S., Mexico, and I've done that by far the most often. Next is the older father in La Traviata, Germont and La Traviata. But I have to say that my favorite opera I have done is Nixon in China. It's a 20th century piece written for Houston, Los Angeles, and I don't think the Met was part of that production originally. San Francisco, Houston, Los Angeles had a joint production of Nixon in China, and it was originally done. The first performances of it, I think, were done in L.A. And so when I did that in Italy, um, really fell in love with the whole piece, the music, the score, the drama of it, and then did it again here in Long Beach with the Long Beach Opera. So I have to say that Barber for standard rep, and then uh, and then Cho and Lai. I mean, it's really difficult for me to choose between the two because they're such different styles. They're very different styles. They bring out a very different part of me, and a very different drama. And I also have to say that I just recently did a piece called "The Camp," which is a story about Japanese Americans incarcerated during World War II, and I played the main figure in it, the role of Mas Shimono, and we did that at the Aratani, and I have to say that was also one of the most like rewarding personal experiences I've ever had in opera. It was deep.
Mhm. So, you have seven numbers for the show coming up
Oh
with
my God.
Verdi Chorus. What do you think is the most challenging for you to do? What are you looking forward? What number are you looking forward to doing?
Well, the way she organizes them, I might be in seven numbers, but I'm not featured in all of them. So two of them are big solos. I'm doing well. Okay, four of them are big solos. Two of them are Verdi arias, and
Mhm.
so they're always the ones that are the most technical. There was one from Don Carlo, and then there's another one from Hernani. And I would have to say that of the two, the Hernani is going to be more difficult. It's technically a very challenging aria, and then it also extends into a scene with a chorus. So I start off with a solo, then there's a short interlude with the chorus coming on, and then I do the finale of that piece with the chorus. That's probably going to end up being the most challenging of everything. But also, um, Don Carlo is going to be difficult, and I can't think of and anyway, I think the Hernani is going to be the difficult one.
Mhm. And have you performed with the other performers before? The other guest performers that are coming?
I performed with Audrey, the mezzo. So yes, I performed with her. The other sopranos is new. This is her first time with the Verdi course, and it will be the first time I've sung with her. She's of the new generation. My generation was back was quite a while further back. So when I was making my my entrance into the field, Domingo was still in his early 40s. Domingo was still in his early 40s, and he was in his prime at that time. Pavarotti was starting to be on the downside of his career. He was starting to have health issues, but I'll never forget as a young man. I was part of that whole ensemble that did the three tenors at Dodger Stadium. And that was a really fun deal.
Yeah. Mhm. So, growing up, you probably didn't have any idol figures like Filipino opera singers, did you?
Well, my dad would tell me about them.
Yeah.
Conching Rosal was big in his time, and then we actually had a traveling group come through our town when we were living in Ohio. We became really good friends with them. The traveling group was called Himig ng Lahi, and that group was Noel Velasco. Noel Velasco was part of that group, and he was. I don't think he was, and his former wife, current wife, past, I don't know, Sonia something. But Noel Velasco and Sonia were headlining that troupe when they came out, and it was part of Felipe Padilla de Leon, Tata de Leon's
Mm.
traveling group. Um, and so I got to see and hear a lot of wonderful, wonderful singers that were Filipino. Um, Tony Saransana, who also did a lot of opera in the Philippines, was another one. So I actually did hear a lot of opera. I did know of a lot of opera singers that were Filipino growing up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you said you always go to the Philippines during that time. Did you go to Laguna most of the time or other places in the Philippines?
mostly Laguna. Yeah, we would stay with our relatives in Laguna. So excuse me, we had family there, and and we would spend most of the time there. But also, we had family all across. We had a lot of family in Manila, Alabang, Makati. So we got to spend a lot of time there. When I was uh, when I was staying in the Philippines for the Rizal for the mga huling araw,
Mm-hmm.
I stayed on. Did I stay at the Manila Hotel? I think it was the Manila Hotel. No, there's a hotel on the Rojas Boulevard that I stayed, and I don't remember its name. Anyway, it was a lot of fun. So yeah, I guess I stayed at quite a few different places when I was in the Philippines.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly Santa Rosa, and I'll never forget, staying at my mother's aunt's house. Um, their last name is Perlas, so there's actually a large Perlas contingent in that town, and we would every afternoon we would sit around and have binyang puto.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that? I mean,
Yeah, my mother's from Laguna,
oh
Alamino.
my gosh, you got to be
That's
kidding
why
me!
I'm asking about Laguna.
Oh my gosh. So do you remember Feliciano Gomez? Do you know that name?
Uh, Not familiar.
He's my grandfather.
Uh-huh.
He was the governor of the province. He had a lot of wives back in back before World War II. So
Mhm.
you're kind of familiar with the story. So so he's he is listed as one of the Bayani of Santa
Yeah,
Rosa,
yeah. He
uh,
is. Yeah.
and there's a plaque in his honor
Mhm.
that's in the town,
Mhm.
and so my grandfather's house was next to the house where my mother grew up, and so they were almost next door neighbors. I mean, but they're 4 years apart, but they were almost next door neighbors.
Mhm. So for clarification, I want to know the jobs of your parents because they're into music.
Well, my mother was an MD, so she was a general practitioner back in the mid '80s into the mid '90s or early '80s into the mid '90s. She was a GP, and then my dad handled her business. He was an accountant by profession. He was a hotel manager for quite a while with Sheraton and Hyatt,
Mhm.
and then he went from hotel management into basically just solely managing her practice. And so he was a businessman that he had he had his entire background in business and supported mom in her practice.
Mhm.
So there was a time we probably had 4 or 5 different offices at the height of our practice.
Mhm.
So it was a lot of fun.
Mhm. But both of them were from Laguna.
Next door neighbors.
Wow. And both of them loved music.
Love music. You know that plaza that's outside the church in the center of Santa Rosa?
Mhm.
There's a plaza that's outside the church in the center of Santa Rosa. And that's they lived right there. They lived right right across from the plaza on one side of it. Uh, my grandfather's house is now a school. It was made into a school by the Japanese during the war. And then the house that's next to it, that used to belong to my mother's aunt, where she grew up, is where they is where they knew each other.
Mhm. Okay. Now, do you have any other dream projects for yourself?
Oh my gosh, retirement. I've been in this business for 40 years. I've been singing professionally now for over 45. Retirement. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Mhm.
I spent a good long part of my life working, and everything's in order for for a nice, easy retirement. That's what I'm really looking forward to.
Where are you planning to retire?
Here, Southern California.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I have a house here with my lady, and we've got things in order so that we're going to enjoy our time here.
Mhm. Well, congratulations. I'm so proud of you. More power to you and all your projects.
Thank you
And
so much.
I hope to watch your show.
I hope to see you there. Please
Yeah.
come on up and say hi.
Congratulations.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Take care, Janet. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.